The world's most deadliest prison story will give you chills. No movie can top this story. True crime documentary. The Prison of No Return. The night was thick with fog when the convoy of armored trucks rumbled up the winding dirt road. Their headlights cut sharp beams through the mist, illuminating coils of razor wire and the hulking silhouette of a fortress that looked less like a prison and more like a battlefield bunker. Locals called it Blackridge Penitentiary, though among inmates, guards, and the unlucky few who had ever been transferred there, it had another name: the Pit. The Pit had no mercy. Built in the 1950s on a remote mountain range, it was designed to swallow men whole. Once you go in, you don't come out the same, an old sheriff once muttered to a journalist, shaking his head. No parole, no rehabilitation. Just survival. That night, survival had failed for one man. Inside cell block D, guards found the body. His name was Raymond Carter, known to the world as a career criminal, but inside Blackridge he was more infamous. A smuggler who'd managed to live almost comfortably behind bars by bribing guards and controlling contraband. Now he lay twisted on the floor of his cell, his throat cut with a blade fashioned from a toothbrush. The blood had already dried into the cracks of the concrete, and his wide-open eyes stared blankly at the ceiling as if caught in his last moment of disbelief. But it wasn't the brutality of the killing that shocked investigators. It was the note. Pinned to Carter's chest with the same crude blade was a piece of paper with 3 words scrawled in jagged handwriting. The game begins. Detective Laura Haynes was the first from the outside brought in to investigate. She was tough, precise, a veteran of organized crime cases in New York. But even she felt the weight pressing down as the iron gates clanged shut behind her. "This place," she whispered to herself, "feels like it's breathing." Warden McAllister, a stone-faced man with 30 years of service, walked her through the prison. Every hallway echoed with the sound of chains, clanging doors, and muttered curses. The walls dripped with damp, and the stench of sweat and mold clung to the air. It was a world cut off from time, where violence was the only law. "This isn't the first body," McAllister admitted, his voice low. "But it's the first with a message. Someone wants attention." The guards whispered rumors of a shadowy figure who ruled the prison underground, someone they called the Ghost. No one had ever seen his face, but everyone knew his power. Drugs, weapons, extortion, all flowed through invisible channels that seemed untouchable. Detective Haynes wasn't convinced. Ghost stories didn't kill men. People did. Ann Carter's death, brutal and symbolic, felt more like a declaration than a hit. Her first interviews were with the other inmates in cell block D. Most kept silent, staring at her with lifeless eyes. But one, a wiry lifer named Marcus Bones Delgado, spoke in a whisper. "Carter thought he was untouchable," Bones said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "But he played too many games. You cross the wrong line and here you disappear. Simple as that." "What line did he cross?" Haynes pressed. Bones leaned closer, his breath sour, his eyes darting. "Ask the guards. Some of them ain't guards at all." That night, Haynes couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just investigating a murder. She was stepping into a war. The next day, another message appeared, this time carved into the metal dining tables of the mess hall. For words scratched deep enough to scar the steel. "No one is safe." By then, rumors spread like wildfire. Inmates whispered that Carter's death was just the first. That the game would claim more lives. That someone inside Blackridge had decided to turn the prison into a hunting ground. The guards tightened control, lockdowns became constant, and tension suffocated the air. Men who had lived side by side for years now eyed each other with suspicion. Every clatter of a food tray, every shuffle of chains felt like the precursor to an explosion. Haynes pressed deeper into Carter's background. Before his death, he had been receiving coded letters from the outside, letters smuggled through corrupt guards. But when she demanded to see the evidence, the mailroom logs were missing. Files had been erased. Someone inside the system was covering tracks. She confronted Warden McAllister, but his face turned stone again. "You think this place is chaos, detective. But it's order, an order you'll never understand." Carter got what was coming to him. "Don't dig too deep. For your own sake." That warning only fueled her determination. 3 nights later, the prison shook again. Another inmate was found dead, this time in the showers. His skull was smashed against the tiles, his body positioned neatly with arms crossed, almost ritualistic. And carved into his chest with a sharp object were the same 3 words. "The game begins." 2 murders, 2 messages, same handwriting, same cold precision. Haynes felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't random violence. It was calculated. A predator was moving through Blackridge with purpose, mocking both inmates and authorities. She examined the body closely and noticed something the guards had missed. A fragment of paper clenched tightly in the victim's fist. She pried it open and read the words, smudged but still legible. "You're looking in the wrong place." Her stomach sank. Whoever was orchestrating this wasn't just taunting the inmates. They knew she was investigating. They were watching her every move. And then came the most chilling discovery of all. As she walked back toward her temporary office, she noticed something tucked under the door. Another piece of paper, folded neatly. With trembling hands she opened it. It was the same jagged handwriting. The note simply read, "Detective Haynes, you're next." The fluorescent light flickered above her, and for the first time she realized the terrifying truth. This wasn't just a prison investigation. She was trapped inside their game. And the walls of Blackridge were closing in. The rules of the game. Laura Haynes didn't sleep. She sat at the steel desk in her temporary office, the threat note open under the buzz of a flickering light. The edges of the paper were oily, as if whoever wrote it had worked in the kitchens or laundry. She thought about the message in the dead man's fist, "You're looking in the wrong place," and forced herself to start over. If the murders were staged as a spectacle, what was the stage? The answer arrived in the form of a soft knock and a face she hadn't seen before. A young corrections officer with tired eyes and a uniform that hung a little loose on her small frame. "Officer Jenna Park," she said. "I heard about the note. You should know, Carter had friends in the laundry. That's where things move. Not the yard. Not the cells. The laundry." "Who told you that?" Haynes asked. "An inmate who wants out of here alive." Park's eyes flicked to the hallway. "If you're going to look, go now. They rotate the carts at dawn." They went without backup. The laundry room was a cavern of steam and rattling metal. Rolling bins the size of bathtubs stood in rows, some stacked with folded sheets, others half filled with uniforms and towels. Park moved with purpose, pulling a cart away from the wall to reveal a maintenance hatch cut into the cinder block, bordered by scuff marks. "Looks like it's been used a lot," Haynes said. Park pried the hatch loose with a screwdriver from her pocket. Behind it, a tight shaft plunged into darkness. The smell of detergent gave way to the metallic scent of hidden air. Haynes lowered herself in and felt metal rungs beneath her boots. 20 feet down, the shaft opened into a narrow corridor. Lights flickered. A string of footprints, wet like someone had just come through, led to a door marked with peeling black paint. Inside, she found a room the size of a walk-in closet. Shelving units lined the walls, each stacked with cell phones sealed in plastic, roll after roll of stamps, and a row of poker chips stamped with a stylized spade. On the table lay a ledger, hand-printed and coded, and a battered flash drive taped to the underside of the tabletop. On the spine of the ledger, a neat title, House Account. Park exhaled. "This isn't just contraband." "No," Haynes said, slipping the flash drive into her pocket. "It's a bank." They sealed the hatch and split, Park to the control office to pull laundry logs, Haynes back to the desk with a borrowed, offline laptop. The files on the drive were small but crisp, time-stamped video clips from security cameras that didn't exist on the prison's official schematics. In one, 2 inmates fought in a cell cleared of bunks while a disembodied voice, filtered and calm, counted down from 10. In another, a man knelt on the shower floor, hands interlaced behind his head, while a shadow crossed the lens and a blade glinted. Overlays flickered at the bottom of each frame. User handles, scrolling numbers, the language of money moving in real time. The comments chilled her more than the violence. 20 on the tall one. Double if he bleeds. House takes 5%. A final message blinked across multiple clips, almost festive. The game begins. She rewound a video and paused at a reflection in a cracked mirror. A hand resting on a rail, a ring catching the light, a coiled snake biting its tail. She had seen that ring yesterday, wrapped around the thick finger of Sergeant Tom Riker, the shift supervisor who had grunted through her questions like he was chewing glass. She went to find him, but Riker wasn't in the tower. He wasn't on the floor. His radio sat in a charging dock, its battery light blinking green. According to the duty log, he'd gone to assist with maintenance. According to the maintenance office, no one had called him. Before Haynes could press further, the alarms hit, short, sharp bursts that turned the air to ice. A unit was moving. Prisoners were ordered to the ground. Officers shouted. The storm swept toward cell block C. By the time Haynes reached it, a ring of guards had already formed around a cell. Through the bars she saw a man hanging from a bedsheet twisted into a rope. His face was swollen. His feet dangled inches above the floor. Sergeant Riker. At eye level, carved into the paint with something sharp, were 4 words. "And no one is safe." "Cut him down," Haynes said, but she knew he was already beyond saving. She scanned the bars around the message and found what she was looking for. The letters weren't gouged haphazardly. They were clean, deliberate, the same steady hand from the earlier notes. Whoever staged this wanted her to see it. "Suicide," one of the guards muttered. "Sure," Haynes said, kneeling to the floor. A smear of fresh shoe polish streaked the concrete under the bunk. She touched it with her fingertip and lifted a thread. Linen. From a laundry cart. He didn't carve that. When she returned to her office, a new envelope waited on the floor. Inside lay a single poker chip stamped with a spade, and a message in that same jagged script. "The house thanks you for your attention." The warden agreed to a full lockdown and finally, grudgingly, authorized her to bring in federal backup. "Deputy Warden Caldwell will coordinate," he said, scrubbing his face with one hand. "He's been with me 15 years. He'll keep a lid on it." Caldwell arrived in a crisp uniform and a colder smile. He listened to her evidence without flinching and promised access to every room, every log, every lens. "If there's a cancer in my house, I want it cut out," he said, tapping the ledger with a knuckle. "You'll have what you need." By afternoon, what she needed had mysteriously gone missing. The laundry logs Park had pulled were gone. The flash drive was wiped when she tried to open it again, overwritten with static. The ledger vanished from the locked drawer where she'd left it. Park swore she'd seen Caldwell near the office while Haynes had been in the block. "Then we go where he can't stop us," Haynes said. "We go to the source." They traced cabling from the illegal cameras through the bowels of the building, past the infirmary, through a crawlspace that smelled of bleach and rot, and up into the chapel. The room sat empty, pews in tidy rows, stained glass saints casting patient colors across the floor. Behind the crucifix, where only the chaplain and maintenance staff had keys, a narrow door hid a staircase to a mezzanine. From there, they found a pane of one-way glass watching a row of solitary cells. On a shelf, a console blinked, a patchwork of consumer routers, splitters, and a switchboard wired into the prison's backbone. Haynes flipped a toggle and audio spilled from a speaker. Footsteps, murmurs, the drip of a leaky pipe, and then a voice filtered through static, smooth and steady, the same easy cadence she had heard on the videos. "House is open," the voice said. "Show starts in 5. A safety clicked behind them. "Hands up," Deputy Warden Caldwell said. He stood in the doorway with 2 officers flanking him, their muzzles steady, their faces set. Caldwell's badge gleamed under the mezzanine light. His right hand wore a plain gold band. No snake ring. "Step away from the equipment," he said. "You went snooping where you shouldn't, detective." "You've been running an arena in your own prison," Haynes said. "Streaming assaults and murders for cash. That ledger will bury you." Caldwell's smile didn't change. "The ledger you lost? The drive you erased? Evidence is a tricky thing in here." Park glared. "You killed Riker." "Riker killed Riker," Caldwell said. "He hung himself after a career of bad choices." Haynes took a step and Caldwell sighted down his weapon. "Don't," he said. "You're a guest. I'd like you to leave that way." "You won't shoot a cop," Park said. "Won't I?" Caldwell asked softly. "This place changes a man." A hum rose through the console. Cameras switched. A cell door unlocked somewhere below with a heavy thunk. On the monitor, 2 inmates paced in tight circles, glancing toward the lens like animals that had learned what the red light meant. Haynes didn't wait for an opening. She lunged sideways, slamming the edge of her hand into the console and plunging the mezzanine into dark. Gunfire cracked. Wood splintered. Park tackled the nearest officer, driving his shoulder into the doorframe. Haynes rolled, caught Caldwell's wrist, and drove his arm into the railing. The gun went off again, the bullet chewing a groove into the pews below. Caldwell cursed, pivoted, and clubbed Haynes in the ribs with the stock. Park jammed a taser into the second guard's side. He convulsed and went down. Caldwell swung the gun toward her. Haynes, half blind with pain, threw her weight into him and they crashed against the console. Monitors spiderwebbed. A wall speaker squealed, feeding their struggle into the cells below. The warden's voice thundered over the prison PA. "Stand down, all units." "Deputy Caldwell, stand down." Caldwell froze for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Haynes ripped the pistol from his grip and brought it to his chest. Park panted, hair plastered to her forehead, the taser still arcing in her hand like a live wire. "Hands where I can see them," Haynes said. Footsteps pounded up the chapel stairs. The warden strode into the mezzanine with 2 more officers. He took in the shattered equipment, the guns, the sweat-glossed faces, and the panic shivering through the prison below. "I should have shut this place years ago," he said. "Tom Riker. The mailroom. The laundry. The chapel. Caldwell, you're done." Caldwell's eyes glittered. "You knew." The warden's jaw worked. "I suspected. I didn't want it to be true." "You didn't want your numbers to drop," Caldwell spat. "You didn't want the state to close your petri dish." The warden stepped forward and jerked as a shot rang out from the stairwell. He crumpled, hand pressed to a spreading stain at his chest. Park spun, firing the taser. A guard on the stairs dropped his weapon and tumbled backward, cursing. Below, a roar surged through the blocks as the news of a shot rolled like thunder. Somewhere, a door slammed. Somewhere else, a man howled. They hauled the warden onto the mezzanine floor as sirens howled. "It wasn't Caldwell," he gasped, grabbing Haynes's wrist with surprising strength. His breath rattled. "The ghost, not a man, it's the house. The house is a person." Then his hand slid away. Federal agents arrived before dusk, a black wave of windbreakers and radios. Caldwell went down hard, the chapel sealed, the hidden network seized, the house account ledger found where Caldwell had stashed it in event. Administrators were dragged from offices, officers from posts, inmates from cells. The story would make headlines for weeks: an underground betting ring, killings packaged as entertainment, a prison eaten by its own appetite. Haynes filed reports until her fingers cramped. She should have felt relief. Instead, a splinter of something ugly worked under her skin. The ring in the reflection hadn't been Caldwell's. Riker had worn it. Riker was dead. The voice on the streams hadn't matched Caldwell's either. When she closed her eyes, she heard a different echo. Calm, measured, careful not to be caught by the microphone. 2 days later, at a motel on the highway out of the mountain, a package arrived at her door with no return address. Inside was a phone wrapped in brown paper, already powered on. A single video waited in the gallery. Haynes pressed play. The frame opened in the chapel mezzanine, recorded from a corner she hadn't seen. One extra camera, aimed not at the cells but at the console. In the reflection of a glossy screen, a face appeared for a heartbeat as the lights cut. A woman's jawline, hair pulled tight, the quick tilt of a mouth in concentration. A hand reached across the console, small, quick, sure. A familiar phone lay on the shelf, its lock screen glowing for an instant as it lit with a text. The ringtone was a soft melody she had heard the first morning, outside her office before the first interview, a childlike lullaby. The camera caught a flash of her name stitched on a uniform pocket before the power died. Park. The video ended there. The phone buzzed in her hand. A new message appeared on the screen, no number attached, just a name, House. "You were never the player, Laura. You were the piece." Another message followed, a photo taken from a car window. A winding mountain road, fog curling off pines, a highway sign pointing west. In the corner of the image, a child's car seat sat empty. "House is closed at Blackridge. But the game doesn't end. It moves." 3 months later, a body was found in a county jail 2 states away, throat cut, a blade fashioned from a toothbrush, and a note pinned to the chest with 3 words in a steady hand. The game begins. If you thought this case was the worst you'd ever hear, you're not ready for the next one.